as Easter comes, I thought I would just go over a few things that I believe we should meditate upon as we think about the whole purpose of Easter. You see, we really shouldn't even call it Easter. We should call it Resurrection Day, because we celebrate on that day the resurrection of Jesus Christ. It happened on the Feast of the First Fruits, because he is the first fruit of those that were raised into eternal body, an eternal physical body that's been glorified. He was the first in Jesus, in his humanity, to ever be brought into that resurrection of the physical body. And so that's what we celebrate on that day that has come to be called Easter. But I think it's important to realize that one of the great proofs that God sets forth about the truth of everything he says about Jesus Christ is the resurrection. And, the apostles preached that as one of the solemn evidences that everything was true when they set forth the circumstantial evidences of the resurrection. So in Matthew chapter 27, beginning with verse 62, we read this, and this sets the stage for checking out the circumstantial evidences for the resurrection. These are the very circumstances, by the way, that many great legal minds have checked out in the past. And they have written books on this, that this would stand up in any court today, that there are more evidences of the resurrection of Christ than any event in ancient history, if you're intellectually honest with the facts. And of course, some say, well, how do you know you have the facts? How can we be sure that these were accurately stated? Well, it would have been just as difficult for somebody to make up and write all of these things as it would be to just believe that God put them there. It would be virtually impossible. Now, here's what Jesus said, or I should say what was said about him. Jesus has been crucified, and his followers have put him in a tomb. And so this is what it says. Now on the next day, which is the one after the preparation, the chief priests and Pharisees gathered together with Pilate, who was then the governor, the Roman governor. And he said, "Sir, we remember that when he was still alive, that deceiver said, 'After 3 days, I'm to rise again.'" This is a claim that Jesus made. And he didn't say that he would be raised ethereally or spiritually. No, he said his physical body was going to be raised from the dead 3 days after he was crucified and put in the grave. Now that's something that could be checked. And we have to stop and think. Jesus, many times in the Gospels, hurled this challenge out there. He challenged them. He said, when you see me raised after 3 days, then you will know that everything I said was true. In other words, he hazarded the truth or falseness of everything he lived for, died for, everything he taught, on the claim that he would be raised bodily from the dead in 3 days. So, these brilliant religious leaders, Pharisees and Sadducees, the leaders of the Jewish religion, they brought this up before Pilate. They said, listen, this deceiver said he would be resurrected 3 days after he was put in the grave. So they said, we need to make sure that his tomb is secured so that his followers cannot come and steal the body away and then go around claiming he was raised from the dead. That shows he claimed a bodily resurrection, by the way, because they were concerned about keeping the body in the tomb. Okay? So, in verse 64, "Therefore give orders for the grave to be made secure until the 3rd day, lest the disciples come and steal him away and say to the people, he has risen from the dead. And the last deception will be worse than the first. They were playing upon Pilate's ambition here. You know, Pilate was a very clever, ambitious Roman leader, and he was in Judea because if you could do a good job in Judea, you would be catapulted into being considered as a senator in Rome. And so he didn't want anything to blight his record. That's the reason he let the crowd talk him into condemning a man that he claimed to be innocent. He said Jesus was a man he found no fault in. And in spite of that, they kept saying, if you don't put this man to death, we will tell Rome. And the Caesar will declare you a friend of those that were promoting insurrection. And so he knew his career would be over. That's the reason he waffled, and he made a show of washing his hands before the crowd and saying, I wash my hands of this because I see no fault in him. He knew his career was on the line here, and they were clever enough to play upon that. Here's what Pilate said to him. Now listen to every word of this, because this is very important. Pilate said to them, you have a guard. Literally, it would be understood today in the original Greek, and this is what it can be translated as. Take a guard. It's in the imperative mood. Take a guard. Go make it as secure as you know how. So he gave them full authority to make it as secure as they could. And it's important that he said, take a guard, because the word that is used concerning the soldiers that were on guard in chapter 28 of Matthew, and in the other accounts of it too, are words that mean Roman soldiers in the Roman legion. He gave them authority to take that. And of course, this is what we would call today a maximum security case. So they had full authority to do whatever they wanted. They took a quaternion of Roman soldiers. The word that's used is that. A quaternion of Roman soldiers to guard the tomb. They had a watch usually of 12 hours each, 2 watches a day. They put a watch there of 16 soldiers. A quaternion was 16 Roman legionnaires, battle-hardened. They were of the Roman 10th Legion. Here's what it says. And they went and made the grave secure along with the guard. And here's the quaternion. And they set a seal on the stone. Interesting, it says they set a seal. Do you know what that was? This is a word that's very well known in the ancient world. The tomb, like all tombs of that day that were elaborately done, it was carved out of a solid rock face. And there was a cavern-like thing carved out of rock, where they would put a body. And the garden tomb where Jesus was placed was like that. And they usually had a big round rock, like a big cylinder, that was at least 1 foot to 2 feet thick. And they'd hack it out and make it round so it could be rolled into place. And they would have a little trough in front of the wall of the tomb where they could roll this circular stone. They could roll it, and they would have a little notch like in front of the tomb so that it would drop into that notch when it rolled into place. Now, it would roll against the face of the rock tomb. And once they put that in place, then they would take 2 dabs of hot wax. One they would put on the wall of the tomb. The other they would put on the stone that was rolled into place in front of the tomb. Then they would stretch a card across and press it into the hot wax. Then they would put the seal, at that time